Hey folks, Colin here from Sumthins Recording, and today I'm going to give you 3 tips for mixing low-tuned bass guitar. So sometimes when you're mixing, you will encounter some lower-tuned bass guitar, and I'm going to show you how to deal with that inside the mix today. But before we dive in, if you are ready to go a little bit deeper into the mixing process in its entirety and really start to hone your workflow as an audio engineer, then I have just the thing for you. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and it's just a simple PDF that will walk you through the entire mixing process step by step to help you get professional and radio-ready mixes without any more of the hassle and without any more of the guesswork. It is a completely free guide, and you can download it below using the link in the video description. Now let's jump in here and take a look at this bass guitar. I'm going to play the instrumental mix for this song here so you can hear how the bass fits into the final mix, and then I'll solo up the bass so you can hear what it sounds like by itself here without the track going. So here's the finished instrumental mix for this song. So you can hear our bass is pretty low sounding. You're gonna have to have a good pair of subs to feel the low end if you're in your room, or at least a decent pair of speakers to hear the bottom end power coming from this bass guitar. But that's the thing here. We've still got good low end power. It's not really loose sounding, even though it's pretty low here. I think we're down at, I think it's tuned to a drop G, so it's pretty low, but we've still got some good low end power and some good tightness coming from our bass guitar here. Let me play you the raw bass here. So this is the DI amp and then a distortion track we have running without the processing on the bus. So you can hear without our processing, the low end's kind of floppy and non-existent. It kind of comes in and out depending on the notes that he's hitting on the bass guitar, and our bass guitar just feels very loose and messy overall. So we're gonna cover 3 tips to get low-tuned bass guitar sounding good inside your mix here. The first one is a high-pass filter. It's getting your high-pass filter set in the right place here. So if I turn off the processing after our first EQ here, I want you to hear what just our high-pass filter is doing for the bass here. We're only at 45.8 hertz, so it's tuned really low, so we're not up at like 60, 70 hertz here, trying to find, power at 80. It's down below where our fundamental is, but we're tightening up the super low sub area here, and that's the key to getting your low end tight on a low-tuned bass guitar like this. So take a listen without the high pass and then with it. So you can hear it feels like we lose some of the bottom end there with the high pass in, but we're tightening up the bottom end overall. So when we boost later, it's a more even boost. You can hear without the high pass, and I'll play it one more time, you can hear some of the notes jump out much farther than some of the other notes. When we put the high pass in, it tightens up our bottom end overall. Take a listen without and then with. So that's our first tip there. Tip number 1 is getting your high pass filter set in the right place where it tightens up your bottom end and gives you a more even low end before you even go into compression or boosting or anything like that. Now, speaking of compression, tip number 2 is compression here. And you're going to see we're doing a lot more compression than you'd probably be comfortable with on bass guitar. So let me hit play here and I'll show you without and then with the compressor here, and we'll talk about the settings. So you can see on those louder sections of the bass there, we're getting up to like 7 dB a reduction here with the compressor. But even in the more even parts here, like this verse section that we're running through, the main riff there, we're doing 3 to 5 dB reduction on the bass guitar here. The reason being is with a lower tuned bass, it's going to be a little bit looser of a sound. So we want to push a little bit harder into the compressor to tighten up the sound overall. The compressor is going to give us that extra level of consistency while also tightening up the bass sound here. The settings on the compressor are pretty standard for me when I use this FET Comp or 1176 style emulation. The attack is at 0.55 milliseconds, so medium, slower for this unit, but still very, very quick of an attack. You can see we're still under a millisecond here. And then release is all the way fast at 50 milliseconds. We want to be able to grab any kind of transients that jump out on the bass guitar and then let go as fast as possible to reset for the next attack point. The input and output, just pushing the input till we're getting that 3 to 5 dB reduction here on the main passages, and then 7 dB reduction or so on the louder points or the bigger peaks in the song. And then just pulling the output back till we're balancing the volume in and out of the compressor here. So take a listen one more time, and I'll jump to that louder section as well so you can hear. It's just on this first intro chorus that we have that bigger peak here. So here's with and then without the compressor. You can hear how much the compressor evens out our bass guitar volume-wise over this first chorus here as we have that bigger peak there right in the beginning. But again, it's also tightening up our bass guitar lengthwise, so it's not really loose sounding across the mix here because he's playing a pretty fast riff, and we don't want frequencies ringing into other hits here across the bass guitar or other notes. So that's tip number 2. Tip number 2 is doing more compression than you're probably comfortable with because it will tighten up your bass guitar and it will also even out the volume because sometimes those lower notes are going to be quite a bit louder than some of the higher notes when you have a lower tuned bass guitar. Now, tip number 3 is boosting bottom end, but after the compressor, okay? So doing these tips in order, we've taken care of our bottom end, and we've controlled it a little bit by using a high-pass filter right off the bat here. So we're cleaning up our bottom end and tightening, focusing here above some of those lower notes. That way we even out our bottom end frequencies overall. Then bringing in our compressor, that's tip number 2, and layering on some compression a little bit more than we're used to here to even out our bass guitar volume-wise as well as frequency-wise, and it tightens things up a little bit as well so it's not too loose sounding here. And then our third tip here is boosting bottom end after the fact there. So we've tightened our bottom end, we've tightened our sound overall with compression, now we're going to boost bottom end so it will be consistent and powerful overall here. Excuse me. So let's jump back to this verse section here with the main riff, and we're going to add in this last EQ. All we're doing here is we're boosting about 6 dB at 70 hertz. This is going to give us all of our low end power, but it's going to be consistent because we're doing it post compression here. So without and then with the boost. You can hear we get all of the low end back that we lost with our high pass filter and then some, and it's all very, very even and very, very consistent because we've done the first 2 tips. We've done our high pass and we've done our compression. Listen one more time here with the boost. So without it first and then with the boost here at the end. Got a lot of low end power coming from the bass guitar now here. Let's throw this back in the track here, and I'll A/B the processing inside the instrumental mix here. You can hear without the processing here, without our 3 tips, our bass guitar pretty much disappears inside the track here. So 3 tips for mixing low tuned bass. Number 1 is getting your high pass set, so taking care of your bottom end right off the bat here. Tip number 2 is doing a little bit more compression than you're used to even out your bass guitar volume wise as well as frequency wise and kind of tone wise. So we tighten it up a little bit. And then step number 3 is boosting bottom end post compression so you get consistent, powerful low end on your bass guitar. I hope that was helpful for you. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, if you're ready to take your mixes to the next level and really start dialing in your workflow as an engineer, then I have just the tool for you, and it is completely free. It is my 7-step mixing checklist, and you can download it below to start creating more professional mixes in less time. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.